welcome back to VOP this morning. I mean, should I say that this is actually a good news? While to cushion the effects of the subsidy removal on petrol and its attendant issues, President Bola Tinubu has announced 50% reduction in transportation costs of commercial buses and free train service from today to 21st of December 2023 to the 4th of January 2024 for interstate travels across the country. Now, they said that the air travels is actually excluded. So to talk about this today, we have in the studio our guest. But before that, the President Bola Tinubu has announced a 50% cut in the fares charges by commercial buses on interstate routes during the UTALD. Minister of Solid Minerals, Dr. Dele Alake, who announced the development on Wednesday, noted that all train routes are free beginning from today, Thursday, December 21st, 2023, to the 4th of January 2024. Mr. Alake also explained that air transportation was exempted as it was for privileged individuals, stressing that the initiative was a presidential intervention on public transportation targeted at the masses. Now, the minister also said that the gesture was in the spirit of Christmas and the end of the year festivals. And okay, so we have here with us Olusesan, right?
Yeah.
Okunade. Okay, so he is a chartered accountant, a chartered tax professional, and chartered transport administrator. He's also the immediate past chairman, Ikeja District Society of ICANN, and the general manager operations, Adroit Mastering Services Limited. Good morning and welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning, my brother. Compliment of the season.
Yeah.
At least we're in the festive period. Even with the breaking news. No whether I'm to be excited or upset as well. But in the spirit of the season, we want to celebrate with the people. That you are alive is worth celebrating.
Of course.
Irrespective of the challenges that we have around us, but it's worth celebrating that we are alive. Yeah,
sure. And we also have virtually Mr. Nick Agule, who's a social commentator. And then we also have Mr.
Adeyemi Birunke also very much with us.
Virtually?
Yes, virtually as well.
But then we're going to start off with our guest in the studio. Now, the Minister of Solid Minerals Development called this a special presidential intervention. I tagged with SPI, adding to the fact that the fuel subsidy has been removed, and then we have a lot that is going on in the country. What's your take on this? Do you think this is a step in the right direction?
Well, I would say it's a step in the right direction, but for me, the implementation is not going to be visible.
Why so?
I'm sure you know during the removal of subsidy, states tried to implement this kind of a thing, but it was actually achievable because we had a state-owned, transport system that was working. It was pretty difficult for the states to actually have a buy-in of the commercial buses because if you're asking for reduction of such, the question is, what are you giving back in return to them? Are you giving them, do you have a designated fuel station where they will be picking fuel to augment what they're doing? If you're talking about tax relief, how many of them pay taxes in such a way to say that they will be on tax holiday for the incentives that you're giving to them? So that has actually metamorphosed into federal government declaring this. But you ask yourself, how many federal government transport or logistic companies do we have? You cannot enforce that on a commercial driver that is going from Lagos to Ibadan and say, rather than taking 5,000, you have to now take 2,005. Who monitors even that? So I get to the park as an individual and say, are you not aware that my president make declaration that you should not, as of yesterday it was 5,000, from today it should be 50,000. The guy tells you, as he reduced the cost of the cost of buying fuel. That has not been done. And that's why we said at the beginning of the whole issue that has to do with fuel subsidy. Can we have a data of people? You see, removing subsidy is no issue to me. But there are ways you can have database of possibly the commercial drivers, the interstate company, and the ones that are, you know, owned by individual. A database where you can develop like a card for them, register them, and know that this kind of a thing, you sit down with them on a round table and said, we are giving you incentive to augment what we are giving to the people. You can't be giving incentive to the people at the detriment of the business of other ones. So what incentive are they getting? Maybe if you looked at the registered logistic company, who I won't want to mention name, that run into states, you can approach them. But what are you bringing to the table for them? But what are you going to do with those at the Ojota garage, those at the Jibo garage, the Sienna buses, all those other ones? What are you going to do with them in making sure that they adhere with it? So it's not about talking the policy, it's the implementation that is my challenge. Because when you do that on the part of the citizen, what are you giving to the people? I've not heard of any meeting when the NURTW, they did that in Lagos, but never worked. And that's my challenge, to say that it's a good initiative, but the implementation may not work out. So it might just be rhetorics that we've always known about.
All right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Olusegun. Now, I'm going to come to you, Mr. Adeyemi Ibirenke, a public affairs commentator and analyst as well. Quickly, what do you think would be the solution? Do you think, with the cost of fuel, do you think this can work? And let's not also forget that just this morning, some of these privately owned commercial buses are coming to say they are not aware of this movement. What do you think, how do you think can work? Okay, Nick, you can just, I just understand that Mr. Adeyemi is not with us. Mr. Nick, thank you so very much for being here. Let me direct this question to you. Following this declaration by the presidency just yesterday, with the cost of fuel, do you think this can work?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Is it to me you asked?
Yes, Nick, please.
Yes,
Mr. Nick.
Because I think Mr. Adeyemi is not here with us.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. And good morning to you in the studios, and good morning to our viewers globally.
Morning.
I want to especially also greet my professional colleague, is it Mr. Adironke, chartered accountant. I'm also a chartered accountant, and actually he's my boss, because as a chairman of District and Society, I have not aspired to that position, but I don't know if he's older than me or I'm older than him. I wanted to ask him what was the membership number.
My professional colleague.
Yes. So incidentally, I am a transporter. I run a transport business. We have a business that runs buses from Abuja here, where I am now, to the Benue, Nasarawa, Plateau axis. We're growing the business.
That makes sense.
So nobody, absolutely nobody has spoken to me about anything. The government, I run a transport business now that has 50 buses. So if we have 50 buses in our fleet, I think we're big enough for the government to approach us.
To have a communication
because between Abuja here to Benue, sorry?
To have a communication with you. The federal government should have done that. That's what we're talking about.
Sorry?
Can you hear us?
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that if we have 50 buses in our fleet, and we're running from here to the Benue, Nasarawa, and Plateau State, we're big enough for the the presidency to have approached us to say, look, we're expecting you to cut your fares by 50%. Subsidized petrol, or they're paying us the 50% in cash, or something. I mean, as a business, they don't expect us that we cut our revenue by 50% and survive, because we're not even making a profit of 10%, given the high petrol cost already. So this type of announcement that has been made by the presidency is very strange. Because you see, if they make this announcement and say the announcement is beginning from today, it suggests that they have already done this arrangement with us, transporters, and we are all ready to start today, so that when passengers come to our bus stations today, we will now say, okay, like our fare from here to Makurdi on a Sienna, which is the smaller bus, is 9,000 naira. So if passengers came today, we'll just tell them, oh, pay 4,500 and get onto the bus. Where do we get the other 4,500? The federal government should have already arranged that with us by saying, look, you will no longer buy petrol at 670 now, you buy at so that you get the 4,500 there, or take the 4,500, send us an invoice, and then we'll pay the remaining 4,500. This government just makes announcements. And it is really concerning. It's a worry, because it's as if they are taking Nigerians for granted. As if they just come out and make a statement and say, well, let's drop this one so that they will be happy. You know, there will be euphoria, oh, this and that. Whereas there is nothing concrete on the ground to support the statements that they are making. And if truly this is the kind of government that President Tinubu wants to lead, it will be very shameful, because we expected much more from him.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Nick. Now we have still virtually Mr. Adeyemi Ibironke. Good morning, sir. So I want to, Mr. Nick talked about the fact that, are you of the opinion that maybe the federal government would have reduced the cost of fuel, or maybe decided to give the transporters or the transport companies an amount of money to augment the 50% removal of cost of transportation? Or what's your take on that? What would you have preferred that the government would have done, since the government is trying to do this for the betterment of Nigerians?
Yes, good morning to the viewers, and good morning to the people in the studio as well. You see, it's interesting that oftentimes we see a cosmetic approach to policy and decision making in Nigeria. So we see a scenario like Mr. Agule just said, where the government makes policies to just create an euphoria without having a proper framework in place. Now, my position since May 29th this year at the inauguration of this administration has always been that if at that inauguration the subsidy could have been removed and the price change took effect immediately, upon the pronouncement of the president, then I would have thought that along that same line, there would have been a similar declaration of state of emergency on our refineries to say, okay, within the first 100 days in office, we commit to fixing 2 refineries, producing at maximum capacity to the Nigerian to feed the Nigerian consumers. That, I still believe, and I continue to argue, would substantially reduce the price of petrol. So until we all agree and come to this realization, all of this policy making to just make people happy, and like both speakers have spoken, yes, they are in the transport industry. I'm speaking as a commuter, as somebody that is just a road user. It's virtually unrealistic for the government to impose on an already stretched private sector this kind of committing to national development. You know, it's going to be unfair, because the private sector is stretched thin. Our state of economy is not what it used to be. Everybody is groaning. People are just managing to get by. So as much as the palliative initiative in this format would have been good in a way, it's on ground. It's good in theory, but in practical, it's not feasible. The only place that you can hold some water on the side of the federal government will be, as far as the rails are concerned, they are in almost total control of the railway system in Nigeria. So yes, people can use the rails free or at 50%.
Yeah, they also mentioned it as well. Yeah, it was mentioned as well, the rails.
Yes. So for that, people can have access to that because the federal government essentially controls at least the majority of the rails in Nigeria. But for the private sector, commuters using the public transportation is going to be difficult. And like Mr. Aguli has said, for somebody that has 25 vehicles in the business, I think the person is big enough because the person will be commuting at least several thousand people per day.
Sure.
So this person is somebody that ideally should have been at the round table discussing logistics. How is it going to work? It's not something that will just wake up in the morning and make this kind of decision. Something that would have been planned, would have been looked into and said, okay, in December, we want to put this plan in place. But ultimately for me, my argument remains that we need to fix our refineries before any of these things can make sense.
All right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Adeyemi Ibironke. You just cleared us there. Not just a public commentator, but also an accountant. Now, I'm going to also direct this question to Mr. Nick, and I believe he's still here with us. Mr. Adeyemi just affirmed that the private sector, the transportation private sector, have been already stretched. I strongly want to believe that being a force, because that's what we can call you, I mean, owing to the fact that you just said you have at least 50 buses running and plying the roads, the Nigerian roads. Now, there should be a body, which I believe there is, that you people are under. Is there any level of communication within that body with the federal government as regards the statements made yesterday? That's on one part. That's one question. The other question is, if the answer is yes, how would that move and statement by the federal government impact the livelihood of transport operators, privately owned? Now, I'm not even talking the public transport owners and their drivers. How would that impact the livelihood of these people? Mr. Nick.
Yes, thank you very much. Before I answer your question, I just want to, give graphic details to what you have said in terms of transporters being stretched, because I am one, I can tell you. Before the fuel price increase, we were running a Sienna. Again, let me use our smallest bus. A Sienna that carries 7 passengers. We will run it from Abuja here to Makurdi and return it with 18 to 20,000 naira fuel. That was what we're spending on fuel. With the increase in fuel, that has become 55 to 60,000.
Wow.
So we run the Sienna from here to Makurdi and return it. We are paying between 55 to 60,000 in fuel.
Wow.
Not only that, all the spares on the buses are imported. And the dollar was 450 when this government started. Today is over 1,100. So the cost of a plug has tripled. So all the monies we spend on maintaining the buses has tripled. So you can see that, as transporters, our backs are against the wall. Wow. For us, we're just running these services because we don't want to leave our loyal passengers stranded. Yeah. So it's very hard, I can assure you of that. Now to say, has there been any discussion amongst any union or group we belong to? If there is, it's not to our knowledge. We don't know anything about that at all. Oh, wow. And you can clearly see that from the way this announcement was made yesterday, this is a spontaneous announcement. Possibly, they just sat in that meeting yesterday and somebody now say, Mr. President, we need to say something to Nigerians so that we can keep their hope alive during this Yota season. And they say, okay, go and cut fares of transporters by 50%. And they just went and made the announcement, and, it makes people feel something is happening. There is absolutely nothing on the ground. I mean, we are a transporter. We also relate with other transporters, like here in Abuja. We relate with other transporters. We know what's happening in the industry. I can assure you that there's absolutely nothing that has been discussed with us, either at individual corporate level or as a collective or as a group, So I want to side with, I think Mr. Adeyemi, my co-panelist who is online, that you see the problem of transportation in Nigeria can be solved very easily. He mentioned about the refineries. You see, Mr. President, we actually thought he came prepared. We thought he knew the issues of Nigeria. There are big ticket items that are issues of Nigeria. The first is electricity, you know, because an economy as big as Nigeria's getting 3,000 megawatts of public power supply is not going to happen. The economy can never move anywhere. So we thought by now he will be tackling that electricity thing big time, head on. The second big thing that is actually affecting us is this petrol thing. Nigeria, as one of the biggest producers of crude oil, is currently refining 0 barrels of crude oil. You know, it's not only that it's a damage to our economy, it's very shameful. You know, then we have things like gas. You know, gas, that is the transition economy. Yeah. Something we have more than even crude oil. You expected the president to be dealing with that. Then we have steel. You know, because we don't have this iron and steel industry, that is why we're importing everything. We're importing every car, every machinery, everything. So he needed to be tackling that. And of course, insecurity is there. But you know, insecurity itself is a symptom of the lack of a big economy. You know, because if you have boys and girls in jobs, they are not going to be available to perpetrate insecurity. Because as we speak today, the ones that are privileged to be working in banks, in telecoms, in oil companies, they are already at work, focused on their jobs. They are not available to anybody to use to perpetrate insecurity. So these big ticket items. And then when we talk about transportation, for 200 million people, the best transportation mode is the rail sector. Carry people on trains. And by now, you would have expected that Mr. President will convene economic summit, sector by sector. He would have already convened an economic summit for rail transportation in Nigeria, where all the global rail operators would have come. And by now, he would have already concessioned the whole of Nigeria to them. And they are already on site, building rail to connect the entirety of Nigeria. Now, from Abuja, where I'm speaking now, you start with every state capital. You have a rail line connecting it to the federal capital. As a start, you understand? Before you now talk about all the connecting all the other cities, eventually every town and village in Nigeria should have a rail station or stations. You know, so these are kind of big ticket things. You were expecting that president to sit down, focus, and be looking at them and be taking them on. So far, we're not seeing that. There is global travel to invite investors. How do investors come when the place is not secured, when power supply is 3,000 megawatts, and when there is no infrastructure and all those kind of things? How would they come? This is the question.
Okay, Mr. Nick, in two sentences, before we come to our in-house guest here, Mr. Olusegun, in 2 sentences. Now, let us just sweep it to the fact that the federal government made that comment particularly for all federal government transportation means, both the rail, the buses, and all of that. My question now would be, how would these statements impact the operators of that sector and their drivers? Let's just say, for instance, they did not, meet with you guys, and they only are talking from the perspective of the federal government-owned buses and all of that, which, of course, is not even enough to convey Nigerians going to and fro where they're going. So how would you explain in just 2 sentences, right, how it will impact transportation owners and then the drivers? I sure hope we still have Mr. Nick with us.
The 3 states that we are covering so far, the federal government has no means of road transportation. The states themselves have transport companies. I know that Nasarawa has, Benue has, Plateau.
That's interesting.
These 3 states that we are covering so far. So even if we say this announcement was with respect to federal government-run mass transit systems, they don't have in these states. They could have in other states, but the 3 states. Because we are on the roads every day.
I think we're having a bit of network glitch there.
Federal government, nothing.
Okay. All right, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nick. Now to Mr. Olusegun. Now, the Minister of Solid Mineral Development, Alake, he said that the federal government, through the Ministry of Transportation, will be working with transporters. And he also mentioned that these people have been told. And he said that everything has been put in place to make sure that this works, to make sure that Nigerians get to their various destinations with the 50% off. And now, Mr. Nick mentioned that he's not privy of such information. How do we balance this?
Let me state this, that most of the time, the government decides to just give us what they want to hear, not really what they want to do. Nick having 50 buses, and I will not relate to him as a transporter, of which I belong to an association, which he does.
Okay.
As a chartered accountant, we pride ourselves with integrity, and that's why today most of us are still finding it hard the way and manner our president is relating to things, because he's our senior. He too is an accountant, a professional one for that matter. And we pride ourselves with integrity. So if you're saying that you have engaged the bus owners, so is it the bus owners with over 500 fleets, of which I cannot even know as we speak? If people with 50 running, because it's like you are regionalizing it.
Yeah.
So if Nick is on Nasarawa, Benue, Plateau, axis, he should have an understanding of, because they all have the platform. So if you are relating to them, the region should be able to communicate that, okay, all of us cannot be in Abuja. I don't expect Nick to be, even if he reside in Abuja, to be part of the meeting.
Yeah.
They have EXCO that would have reflect the information and pass it across to them that this is what we say. And at that time, this is what is compensating for it. And if I pick up on what my brother asked, that even if federal government has their own, logistic company that plows this road, don't forget that it's our money that is still going to be used to pay the subsidy. It's taxpayers' money.
True.
So it's not that they are doing us any favor. If we refuse to pay the tax, there is nowhere income will be there to create the subsidy that they are talking about. So as far as we are concerned, you are concentrated. You see, this would have worked if you're talking about UK or possibly US, where their means of transportation is by rail.
Yep.
People move all the way from Lagos to a distance of Lagos to Ilorin, and that's where they walk. Most of the people that you see here, that they tell you that they have job, but they don't stay in the state, out of the country there. But because they have a workable logistic or transportation means of going, you get to the train. If it is 8, you are there for 8.
Yeah.
And I think that's the little thing the Lagos State, this that they are trying to introduce at the federal level, Lagos State has done it, so it's not new. I'm sure they are not going to tell Lagos State to now make everything absolutely free. Because some of us that are not plying the train, we ask questions. As a taxpayer, what am I benefiting? I am going to be part of this celebration. What is my benefit in it? I'm going to fuel my vehicle. And that's why we have said, if you are going to make the train available and accessible to everybody, it should be something. Because with this, if it's going to be free, a lot of people will abandon their, and you can imagine the queue. I feel the pain of most commuters in the morning when they are going to work. Just because of the hardship that we have in the land, have to go and queue for, the land bus, who they consider relatively, cheaper compared to what the commercial people are actually charging you. So for me, we should have an holistic view. And some of us have suggested this. Can we have a database of some of these companies? This is when you now make use of data. You are given this incentive. You don't even have a database of what you're working on. How many vehicles are you actually given that concession to?
So sorry, just hold your thoughts there. Now, you said something about database. Interestingly, just yesterday, right? Well, we saw that the Senate has come out to say we cannot fund Census 2024. So when you talk about census database, particularly in the transport system, I'm trying to now relate it to not having funding for even to have a censor in a country.
When I heard that news yesterday, I laughed. And why do I laugh? these leaders will continue to deal with average citizen the way we want to be dealt with. If there is no data to write or work with, how do you make projection into the future of areas to serve?
This is where exactly I'm going to. So sorry,
okay.
You see, when you now spoke about this, what I'm trying to even find out is, how do you think the database of the transportation system can be gotten? What solution would you prefer as an individual now?
We have one that is actually running that I will give to individual. When you go to public garages, there is this manifest. How many of it have we utilized to actually know the influx of people that moved on a particular area in a particular time? That data is not available to us. We just fill the manifest and somebody just tear in case of accident. That's a database that you can ride on to say, if you go to Beggar bus stop, these are the number of people that goes to Ibadan. These are the number of people that goes to Akure. These are the number on daily basis. Go to Ojota. This, harmonize those things together and use it to project on things that you are going to do to say, okay, if I'm given relief, I think I will concentrate more because people of this area hardly travel this period. You have a trend analysis to say in the last 2-3 years, this is what we've had. We had that because I consider that as a data, which you can put together to say, okay, this is how it works. Not only for accident or emergency. That on its own can be consolidated together to have understanding of even where to put more buses to. In case the government wants to now say, okay, let's even delve into this business by providing more buses for people to do. So you can now say, okay, no, we have 50 buses to go. With the data that we have more people, moving to this particular place, not giving concentration to it, but okay, at a particular time, so data is fundamental. And that is why we are still not getting it right, because we don't have data.
Who are we going to hold responsible for not being accountable for these regulations?
It's the government. No other person you hold. It's the government. Because if it is good, it is about them. If it is other way around, it's about them. So what are what are the people that are actually, appointed or engaged, employed to do this service? What are they doing? You see, if you look at the way and manner social media works, it is your data. I'm sure by the time you go to Facebook or some area, you play a game and it looks as if the guy knows more about you. There are data you have inputted. I've tried this situation where I have 2 Facebook accounts. One I'm my normal self. The other one I improvise it. And I throw in certain things. And I'll go and play the same game on 2. And it'll be feeding me. It's what you feed in that you get. So when you don't have data to write on, how do you actually make projection? You have said that you are giving this 50% palliative to who? How many people? So those of us, you and I'm sure you are not going to ride on public transportation. What will be your benefit? We are talking of interstate. What of the local one? You are putting the state to go and do that particular one, of which you can give kudos to some state that they are doing. I know for Lagos, I know for, I think, Ogun State too, I have it. What we want is a situation where government on its own will be sincere with the policy in such a way that it will impact on an average. But this, the use of celebration in the way is going to create more chaos because people that are aware of this information will get to the park and say, oh boy, you can't take this thing 5,000 now. Other government have declared it.
I'm just going to push it.
Mr. Nick now. So the last question I'm going to ask you is the fact that the federal government has said that the airfare is not included. If you're traveling by air, just know that you're on your own.
It's like
airfare right now is about 200 and something thousand now. They said it's luxury. We just want people that apply the road. Judging with the fact that we are having a lot of insecurity in Nigeria, kidnap, a lot is happening on our roads, accidents and all of that. What's your take on that?
I don't have any problem with that, to be honest, because that's what governments all over the world do. They take care of the lowly and allow the rich to swim on their own.
Is it really the rich that fly?
If the government is supporting... Sorry?
People that fly by air, is it really about the rich?
Before now.
before now. I mean, people could actually afford airfare.
So
Airfare used to be 20-something thousand few years ago, and now it's about 200.
So elsewhere in the world, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Elsewhere in the world, anybody can fly. Take for instance, I mean, I have dual residency, as you may know. I live in the UK, so I'm fully aware that with a minimum wage of about £1,500 in the UK, and flights costing as cheap as £10-20, depending on £30, depending on when you book, anybody can fly. So flying in a place like the UK is not only for the rich.
Okay.
But flying in Nigeria, because speaking about Nigeria, is for the rich, because 30,000 naira is the minimum wage in Nigeria, and you don't find flights with 30,000. It then means that all those who are minimum wage or anything above that cannot fly in Nigeria. So when government is making policy, the government should cater for those who don't have the wherewithal, the means to be able to afford services. Why the government should leave those who are, you know, in a position to pay for their services, to pay for their services. And it is a reason that some of us were totally against fuel subsidy. Because fuel subsidy was not a segmented policy. It meant that even if Dangote drove his car into a petrol station, he was going to buy subsidized fuel. You understand? If Otedola, you know, or Tony Elumelu drove their long convoys into a petrol station, they both fuel at subsidized rate, and the subsidy was being provided by Nigerians. So what government needed to have done was to find a way whereby the Otedolas and the Dangotes buy their fuel at normal price, while the poor people buy it as some sort of subsidy. So if government is focusing on the less well-off, that is the normal thing that happens elsewhere. You know, in the UK, for instance, government provides for everybody. Yes, that's true. But what government does is that government takes heavy taxation from the rich. Heavy taxation. Like when I was working in the UK, my tax was 40%. I was in the 40% tax bracket. Meaning my gross salary was, after a personal allowance was taken, was taxed at 40%. Then when I brought that 60% home and I walked into a shop to buy, I faced VAT of 20%. And if I drove into a petrol station to fill my tank, I faced a fuel duty and road tax of 60%. 60%. The fuel price you see, because government believes that you must be rich to be driving a car. But then government is using that money to provide excellent rail service, excellent bus service, excellent tram service, excellent boat service for all the people in the country.
Oh, wow.
So this is the role of government: take money from those who have it and provide for those who are struggling, so that altogether there is a minimum level of social net that you won't fall through. And I can tell you also that in the UK, children all the way to age 18, they don't pay on public transportation. And then those who are old, from 65 years and above, they also don't pay. But this money is coming from the rich people who can afford to fly private jets and all of that. You know, in Nigeria, we seem to be doing totally the opposite. So for me, it's okay for government to do that kind of policy in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Nick. And definitely we would get back to you on the other topic. And I believe we still have Mr. Adeyemi Ibironke with us. We are definitely getting to the next topic after this tiny little break. But then, I wanted to relax something.
Yeah, up next on VOP this morning, please, gentlemen, stay with us. Up next on VOP this morning, 113 generals retire as the defense minister demands loyalty from armed forces. Details when we return.